a nice fall day outside, isn't it? Mm-hmm. Feels real good. Nice, cool, crisp air on a nice fall morning. So let's go ahead and jump into what we're going to discuss today. Just a couple of reminders. The first activity assignment, I believe, is due this Friday, right? So if you haven't attended an activity yet, I did put in that the ACS student affiliates, I think, meet tomorrow. So there's certainly that available to you. And then I will put in Canvas information on the upcoming chemistry department seminar that's this Friday. You all could attend that as an activity if you wanted to. So that information will be in the activities later this afternoon. You all probably noted that I didn't have a notebook reflection last week. That was me just forgetting to put it in, and I apologize. So it's not going to be counted against you. So don't worry about that. We'll continue and march on as best we can. I have not yet graded everything, as you all well know, but I'm going to spend some time this weekend looking over your semester by semester guides and providing feedback. And again, if you followed the rules, you're going to get full credit for it, so don't worry too much about it. But what I'm going to do, just to let you all know, interim grades are due soon. So everything that I have graded up to that point will be used in determining your interim grade. And know that, that interim grade is just a snapshot at that point in time, right? So, and that's the case for each and every one of your classes, that the interim grades are going to be a snapshot at some point in time. So don't worry too much about that. Oop, I selected the wrong class. 251. That's the next hour after you all. I need to be in 108. Okay. So, a couple of things that we're going to talk about today. We can get there we go. CNN talks with Steve Trim, venom drug scientist. What was interesting about this particular piece for each of you? Mm-hmm. Yeah, so why would we even think about looking towards venoms for things that might be therapeutic? Anybody have a hypothesis or a theory about that? What do we know about venoms? You all know something about venoms, right? You all have.
Well, they use snake venom to make antidotes for snake bites.
Yeah, they do. They you've probably seen things on TV where people, in these reality things where people are out catching snakes and keeping them and milking them and selling their venom for actually quite a good chunk of money for research and for making anti-venom. What else? Why would we look to things that are venomous? What do we know about venoms in general? Don't think about the synthesis of this, that, or the other from them, but what do we all know about venoms? They're toxic. Okay, what else? Related to toxicity.
Lethal.
Pardon?
Lethal.
Lethal? They could be, yeah. But again, related to that. They're all biologically active, right? They create some kind of biological response, right? Which would be toxicity, lethality, red mark, right? Welts, whatever the case may be. These defense mechanisms that these animals have elicit some type of biological response in their defense mechanism when they bite something and inject venom. So why might that be a place to start looking for new medications? Well, we know that a venom will interact with some biological molecule and cause it to quit working, right? And so that is kind of like an inhibitor. And you all are going to learn as you move throughout your course of study that that's how drugs work. They interact with other biomolecules and create some type of response. Either they shut down something or they upregulate it and make it work better or whatever the case may be. And that's what venoms can do. And so we can actually look to venoms to see whether or not we can find information there, discover new things, and try to determine if we can make them druggable. Are there any current drugs that were based on venoms according to the reading? Yeah, there are. There are drugs that are based on venoms, and so how many of you might think that this would be kind of a neat thing to do? I mean, people like working with spiders and snakes and stuff like that. You do? Yeah. Not too many people do, but yeah, that's good. What are your favorites? Spiders or snakes or?
I like snakes.
Yeah?
I used to have one, so
What kind of snake did you have?
it was a ball python. Pretty good standard.
Okay. I don't like snakes. But I wish them no harm either, but I like to stay away from them myself. I could never do this type of work. But do you think that this type of work is going to be just chemists, or do you think this is going to be more interdisciplinary? Do you think Venom Tech, the company that he created, is just a bunch of chemists? What other kinds of scientists do you think he needs?
Probably biologists.
Biologists, right? Chemists, different types of chemists. What kind of chemists might you need in something that's called Venom Tech? Biochemistry, probably need to know a lot of biochemistry. What else might you need to know? Some organic chemistry, maybe hire some organic chemists. If you think about it, how would you all think about going about studying a venom? Do you think venom is just a pure thing, or is it a mixture of things? It's a mixture of things. Yeah, there's all kinds of stuff. And in fact, there was when I was an undergraduate student at the University of Arkansas, there was a scientist, and I forget his name now, but they called him Spider-Man. He did spider venoms, and one of the spiders that he looked at, I believe it was the brown recluse. But what they found was when you looked at all of the mixture components of the venom, each and every one of them by itself really wasn't that toxic. But when they were together, it gave a very toxic venom. And they studied that for years and discovered the mode of action of the venom and all that kind of stuff. So it was pretty interesting to hear him talk about it. I certainly wouldn't want to have been in his lab working with the spiders. But I thought it was kind of interesting to show how you don't have to just be a chemist at a bench. You can actually be looking to nature for inspiration, right? And chemists do that all the time. We look to nature for inspiration to find new molecules that might have new and interesting uses for a variety of reasons. All right, so I hope you heard the interview that I had with Dr. Davis, Dr. Mario Davis. What was interesting about his career trajectory? Anybody remember anything about it? So he was a Golden Eagle here many years ago, a lot more years than I thought I had remembered, if you listen to the video. So what did he do? Where did he go and do his PhD? So he left here and went where? Yeah, he went to Texas Tech and he studied inorganic chemistry and got his PhD in inorganic chemistry. I don't remember what his research topic was, but he did go to Texas Tech, which is one of the top chemistry programs in the nation. Got his PhD in inorganic chemistry. If I remember right, he did his undergraduate research here with Dr. Wallace, who's also an inorganic chemist, so that's kind of how he got interested, I believe, in that particular branch of chemistry. And anybody know what inorganic chemistry is? How would you define it? There are 5 branches to chemistry. Inorganic is one of them, right? So there's organic chemistry, which is the study of carbon. And then there's inorganic chemistry, which is the study of everything else. That's the way that I think about it. I'm an organic chemist, of course, and I think that organic chemistry is the most important chemistry that there is because of my own personal bias. But inorganic chemistry is the vast majority of the periodic table. Most of the things that you're dealing with in general chemistry are inorganic. You're dealing with things like salts, metals, nonmetals, right? You're largely talking about the periodic table and a little bit of physical chemistry, a little bit of analytical chemistry thrown in there. And but most of what you learn in general chemistry is what we think of as inorganic chemistry. And in fact, at some universities, they actually call general chemistry like elementary inorganic. They'll use those types of words with it. We actually have an upper level inorganic class that follows Gen Chem. So if you're on the chemistry side or in the chemistry degree plan, the ACS certified chemistry degree plan, you will take a class in inorganic chemistry. Biochemists do not take that class. You can take it as an elective, but nonetheless, that's what Dr. Davis did. What's he do now? Is he a chemist still? Well, once a chemist, always a chemist, I suppose. But he's not a practicing chemist, right? So what's he doing now?
Is it education?
It is. He got interested in education and went and got a job for a consulting firm and does that kind of work now. But he uses his chemistry knowledge, his science, his STEM training to actually probe and ask questions about education to help people develop new education pathways and new education programs to help students in a variety of school districts. So he is still using his training, but certainly in a different way. And that's one of the things that I want you all to take away from in terms of your studies in chemistry. You may not actually end up being a practicing chemist wearing a white lab coat at a bench doing chemistry all day. In fact, fewer and fewer chemists actually end up doing that kind of work. Even if they go into industry, you might end up, if you end up working for Pfizer or Eli Lilly, you may have a team of chemists that work for you, and you would actually be the one that actually directs that research. And so you might find yourself more in an administrative role. You might find yourself more in a consulting role. There's lots of things that you can do with a degree in chemistry and biochemistry other than doing actual chemistry and biochemistry all day. You can do a variety of things. And so Dr. Davis certainly went kind of that non-traditional path. Most people go and get a PhD and then think they're going to go into academia, which is the university, and have their own laboratory and do a variety of things, but that wasn't where he ended up, and that's very interesting from my viewpoint. All right, I told you that we were going to have a discussion about Chapter 2 of Will This Be on the Test? Let's see if I can download this. There we go. So what was the title of Chapter 1? Anybody remember? It's not all about you, right? And then Chapter 2, just kidding, it is all about you, right? So, but Chapter 2 really is focusing more and more on personal responsibility. I want you all to understand some significant differences, which you all, I mean, we're kind of at midterm now. You've probably realized that college is quite a bit different from your days in high school. And of course that depends on the different types of high schools that you all attended. But there are some false assumptions that you might have about your professors. Let's go through each one of those a little bit. First one, right, is that the only responsibility of a professor is to teach class. Right? We talked a little bit about that last time. What are some of the responsibilities of professors other than teaching class? Let's put that one off the board.
Research.
Research, that's going to be a big one. Right? And what's another one? Service. Right? And service is a very broad term. What things do you think about in terms of your professors, maybe in terms of service? Have any idea?
Grad students advisor, or advisors for grad students.
Okay, yeah, overseeing maybe some grad students. From my perspective as a faculty member, if I put my faculty hat on for just a second, I have two flavors of graduate students that I have to help take care of. I have my own graduate students, and I'm chair of their PhD committee. Okay, so they work in my lab, they work on the problems that we have decided to work on, and I'm the chair of their PhD committee. I don't consider that service. That's me teaching again, but I'm teaching not in a classroom setting. I'm teaching in the laboratory and one-on-one with my graduate student. But the other type is I actually serve on other graduate students' committees. I'm not the chair. Every graduate student has to have 5 committee members. I do consider that service, right? So they're not working on problems that I've come up with to work on. I don't have any direct oversight over their day-to-day. But I sit with them once a year and hear them talk about their research progress. I provide feedback on that. I sit with them during their comprehensive exam. I sit on their PhD defense. And that, to me, is service. Okay? And that's service. What other types of service might professors be involved in? Tutoring, yeah, they could be involved in tutoring. So we have the tutorial center. Does anybody know everybody know where the tutorial center is? Yeah, okay. Walker Science Building, second floor. You've probably been in there probably before lab to make sure your labs were written up right? That's usually when the tutorial center. But many faculty will spend an hour over in the tutorial center. I used to spend an hour over in the tutorial center a week. What else might be considered service? One of the biggest things is actually just helping run the university. Many faculty sit on committees, university committees, that help develop the curricula that you all use in your various programs. Right? They'll serve on what we call curricular committees. They will serve on the the undergraduate and graduate councils, where all of these programs come through and have to be vetted by faculty. Faculty have control over the curriculum, and so they serve on those as well. What other types of service might you think of? So far, everything's been internal to the university. Do you think we do any kind of service outside of the university? And what might that be?
Like going to conferences and stuff?
Okay, maybe not going to conferences, but certainly helping host a conference or helping plan a conference. That certainly comes up quite a bit. Faculty quite often are asked to serve as panelists at conferences. Me just going to a conference, if I just went to an American Chemical Society conference, I wouldn't consider that service. It's professional development for sure. But if I was asked to help put together a symposium, if I was asked to help put together a panel for something at a conference, that would definitely be service. What else? That was a good one. Turns out we do a lot of community service as well. And I'm not talking about things like Habitat for Humanity or coaching the soccer team. Faculty certainly do those types of things, and for some people they do count that as professional service. But chemists quite frequently will be asked to serve as expert witnesses on juries or in terms of a variety of cases. Lawyers will reach out, for example, like patent law issues, to ask faculty to serve as an expert witness or to provide expert testimony for a variety of things. We have faculty members at this institution that are asked to go and testify before Congress. There's one faculty member right now, I think today actually, that is in Washington, D.C., who is testifying something to do with artificial intelligence. He's serving as an expert witness for a congressional committee. All of that kind of stuff is service, and faculty members are called upon to do that type of stuff all the time. Not any one faculty member all the time, but I mean, the faculty as a whole, we're asked to do that type of service. So we do have responsibilities other than to teach classes that range from research to a variety of service responsibilities. It is their responsibility to tell you everything you need to know and make sure you understand it. Right? What's one of the biggest differences between a high school class and a college class? Right? When you took high school chemistry, how many days a week did you meet? 5 days a week. How many days a week do you meet now? 2 days a week. Right? So, and you're in those 2 days a week, maybe 3 days a week, depending on your schedule, depending on the class, right? You are in class just 3 hours for most classes. Some of them you may be, this class you're only in class for an hour, right? So do you think that the faculty member is going to be able to make sure that each and every one of their students understands each and every piece of information? No, of course not. That just doesn't how it happens, right? That's why this is called higher education. They all know your name and will take a personal interest in you. Right? When you were in high school, your teachers probably knew your name, probably interacted with you a lot more than your professors do. Having said that piece, I want you all to know that most professors do want to take a personal interest. Right? In a small class like this, it's easier for me to know folks' names, and it's still difficult because I only see you once a week. But I do take a personal interest. I do want to know what you're doing. That's why I ask certain questions of you in your homework so that I can get to know you a little better to help you as you move through our curriculum. They will remind you of deadlines. Very few faculty are going to remind you of any deadlines. Canvas has certainly changed that a little bit because it will remind you, right? This is a big one. What does it mean here? That they will scaffold every major assignment so that you can inch your way to the final product. What's meant by that? What do we mean to scaffold every major assignment? This happens a lot in high schools, right? In a major assignment, they will tell you exactly what they want at exactly every point of the assignment, right? That doesn't happen in college. We give you a big assignment. I gave you all the assignment to go and put together a semester by semester guide. I showed you an example of a single semester, but you all then had to figure out how to build your spring semester and your summer semester and your next fall semester. I showed you the basics that you needed, but you needed to actually go and figure out the details because it had to be your specific schedule. So, each and every one of you will have a little different schedule, right? And that's okay. Provide an academic safety net and opportunities to recover from fumbles, such as extra credit and extensions on assignments. Some faculty will provide you opportunities to redo or to turn in things late or to whatever. But you can't make that assumption across the board, right? You have to figure out when things are due, and sometimes you just have to kind of live with the consequences. How many of you have a class that only has a midterm and a final? Anybody? Okay. You do? Okay. So your freshman year, it's fairly rare for that to happen. By the time you get to your junior and senior year, a good number of the classes that you will be taking will only have 2 assignments the entire semester. A midterm and a final. And hopefully the midterm happens before midterm grades. And so that can be tough, right? A midterm and a final only determining the outcome of your overall course grade can be really tough for anybody. But nonetheless, that will happen. Each and every one of you will have a class at some point that only has a midterm and a final. So if you really mess up on the midterm, things mathematically get very difficult from there, right? And so you've got to be careful with those types of classes. What's one of the pitfalls that you think students fall into in terms of a class that only offers a midterm and a final? Right? Midterm is like October-ish, right? We're getting close to that now. What pitfall would you have fallen into, you think?
Procrastination.
Procrastination. It is the biggest it's the biggest killer of students. Grades is procrastination. It's real easy to come to the first day of class, look at the syllabus and go, all I got to do is read these things, and then I'll have a midterm in October, and I'll have a final in December. I can put that off. I've got other things to do. That's an easy thing to get into. It's an easy trap, but don't fall into it, please, because it is very difficult in those types of classes 2 or 3 days before the exam to catch up on everything. It's almost impossible, okay? Here are some assumptions that professors do make about you. And I've heard this many a time. You're an adult and you can take care of yourself. I know each and every one of you feel that way. And certainly faculty feel that way. But coming from high school where you had a different environment, it's very different here. And we kind of make assumptions, right? And that's not always the case. I mean, you are, of course, legally an adult, but nonetheless, there's a transition period to where we are. Every year, as a professor, I get a year older, but when I come into this class, this whole class is still full of 18, 19, and 20-year-olds. And the gap grows, right? My experience increases, and still it's 18, 19, and 20-year-olds in this class. And so there's a big gap between what I'm starting to see and experience versus what the students are. So that becomes a challenge for all of us as well. We assume that you've attended college as your own choice. I'm not going to ask anybody to raise their hand on this one, but there are some of you who felt pressured to come to college or maybe didn't know what else to do. And so you may not be fully engaged with your decision to come to college. I do want you all to know that we have resources here at the university to help you through that if that's your case. We have everything from the advisors, right? We have counselors, and just faculty members will be willing to help you through that as well. And so I do know that there are expectations of some students to attend college, and they felt pressure to do that, or you may have felt pressure to choose a particular major by your family. I was very fortunate in that regard. I never had pressure. My mom and dad didn't attend college. I wasn't expected to go to college. My dad was an electrician and a farmer. My mom was a homemaker most of my life. There just was no pressure for me to go to college. How I got here was almost miraculous in a lot of ways. But nonetheless, I never felt that pressure. So that's one of the things that I didn't experience. Now, I can tell you that my children probably felt pressure to go to college simply because of what their mom and dad did, and the fact that we were on college campuses all the time probably gave them a sense that they were expected to go to college. I can tell you for sure that faculty members believe that you have developed good organizational and study skills and that you're ready to rock and roll. And you may well have developed good high school level study skills. Many of you, though, probably in high school, never did homework at home. There's a lot of people that go through high school without ever cracking a book at home. That's not the case here, right? It's not going to be, we will cover everything that you need to know in this class, right? And we certainly make the assumption that you will complete all the assignments and readings even if they are not graded. That is an assumption. When I teach my organic class, I tell every student this. I have assumed you have at least skimmed the material before I start. Each and every lecture. Do I know that happens all the time? Absolutely not. I mean, it doesn't happen all the time. But that's the assumption that I make. I can't come in and say, spend 15 minutes reading through section 5.5, and then we'll get started on it. You have to come prepared for that, right? Why is that important? We talked a little bit about this before. Why is it important for you all to have at least skimmed the material and read through it, at least lightly, before you go to each and every one of your classes?
Because most of the professors usually expect you to.
Okay, certainly there's the expectation, but cognitively, why is that important?
It's easier to actively learn if you're already somewhat familiar.
That's right. You need to at least be familiar and prepared for what's to come, right? if you all are taken off guard by what the topic is, you will be scrambling in your mind to try to figure things out. And that's not good. It's like painting a wall. You know, you got to prime the wall well for the paint to stick. And reading before you go to class is that primer. It is a good way for you to get your brain in the mode that you need to be in to retain that information. We also make the assumption that you care about learning. And many of you don't. Many students don't care about learning. You care about getting a credential to go on and get a job, or to go on to medical school, or to go on to whatever. And learning is just a secondary thing for many people. But every faculty member assumes that you care about learning. And you should care about learning. That is something that I think you should care about. It's going to be something that will serve you for the rest of your life. If you can learn, go talk to the richest people in America, and they will tell you that their main task every day is to learn more so that they have more information to go out and do what they do. Elon Musk is that way. Warren Buffett is that way. Warren Buffett says he spends every day, and he's in his 90s, reading at least 3 or 4 newspapers on what's happening in the world so he knows where the best financial investments are going to be. You're always going to be a lifelong learner, no matter what choice you do. Whether or not you finish college or not, you're going to be a lifelong learner. And the biggest difference in success for people is the ability to do that and do that well. So, what do you need to do to be successful? You all already know some of this. We've talked about some of this. Some of this is a little past due, of course, given that we're at midterm. But it is important for you to locate your classrooms early, know what's going on. You've already either done that or you haven't. You should know where all your classrooms are at this point. But it's very, very important to know those types of things, of course, before you ever get into class. You need to be ready to catch up on your own if you added a class after the first day. How many of you made the assumption that the first day was just going to be a syllabus day? Most people do. And for many classes, it kind of is, isn't it? I mean, you walk in, you get a syllabus, you get introduced to the class. I can tell you for sure that if you ever take any of my higher level classes, the first day will not be a syllabus day. We will cover the syllabus, but briefly. I always post that kind of stuff in Canvas, and I ask students to read that before they come to class to be prepared. So we don't spend an entire hour covering the syllabus. There are reading assignments before the first day. If you read through this a little bit, anybody in here ever see the 1973 movie, The Paper Chase? You should watch it. It's an old movie. It's 49 years old, of course. But it's about a student who in his first day in a particular class walks in and realizes he was woefully underprepared. He had not read the material. And that was back in the day when they posted things actually on a physical bulletin board, and he just didn't do it. He just showed up to the first day of class kind of thinking it was going to be a syllabus, and he found himself to be quite embarrassed by the professor. Of course, professor shouldn't embarrass you, but nonetheless, that's what happened in The Paper Chase. So it's a good movie. I would highly recommend it if you like classic kind of movies. Of course, you need to attend every class, whether you think it's helpful or not. You do need to attend class, even for classes that are doing what I'm doing right now, recording and posting. There are things in class that will happen that will not be captured well in audio or in just simple video. I'm teaching organic chemistry, what I affectionately call baby organic chemistry. It's for the non-majors. It's 251. It's one class, one semester organic class. I'm teaching it this semester. I record for them as well, but I do a lot of work on the board. Do you think I really spend a lot of time reorienting my camera so that I capture everything in great detail? No, because I expect them to be in class. We also do active learning assignments where I'm walking around and helping people with problems. Do you think that gets captured well in this? The audio might get captured, right? But so if a student is gone, they will have what they get from the slides. They will have from what I'm here standing and talking, but they will not have those other pieces. They will miss out on that. And being in class is the only way to do that. Also, remember, you're paying for this. Right? Does everybody remember about what I said it costs per minute for you all to be in a class? Anybody remember that number? It's about 50 cents a minute. That comes to $30 an hour. You're paying the university about $30 for every class hour that you're sitting in class. That's a lot of money. That's not cheap. Now, you may not be paying that out of your pocket. You may have a Pell Grant. You may have a scholarship. You may have a rich uncle, whatever the case may be, and that's good. But somebody's paying $30 an hour for every hour that you're attending class. Of course, reading the textbook, even if those topics are covered in class, that's very important. Doing all the assignments and homework. You will be in classes where homework is assigned but not graded. In my 251 class, I assign for each chapter about 20 problems, and I only take up one problem to grade. You don't know which one it is, right? But I only take up one of those problems, okay? So the whole point of doing assignments and homework is to prepare you for the test, okay? And that's the important thing. You need to spend more time outside of class than in class on your coursework. That's a big one. And that's a big difference between high school and college. In high school, you may well have only had 3 hours out of the week in terms of real content delivery by your teacher, and you may have spent the other 2 hours, in class doing homework, writing essays, whatever the case may be. That's not the case here. Okay? Why is it that the federal government considers 12 credit hours to be full-time? Yeah. So what's a full week for somebody? 40 hours, right? So if you were working a full-time job, at some, let's say, Kohler engines or whatever, right? They're going to full-time. They're going to expect you to be there 40 hours a week. Well, that's the standard. That's the standard week that people adhere to, right? So you're in class 12 hours. And if I'm going to spend 2 additional hours for every hour of class, how many outside hours is that? $36 hours is kind of what your time commitment needs to be for a 12 credit hour load. 12 credit hours will get you full-time status from a federal perspective. What is a full-time student at USM though? Is it 12 credit hours? 15. Yeah, close. So we consider a full-time student for scholarshiping purposes and things like that to be a 15-hour load, right? And so why do we pick 15 as opposed to 12? Anybody know? You all are getting a bachelor's degree. How many years do you think you're going to spend doing this total? 4, right? You all think it's going to be 4 years, right? The typical degree plan, other than ours is 124 hours, but a typical degree plan at USM is 120 hours. All right, so if you do the math, it ends up that you need to be spending 15 hours per semester for over 4 years to get that 120 credit hours. And we actually have a program at the Institute, or not a program, but a goal of having each and every one of our students finish in 4. Right? Why is it important to finish in 4 years as opposed to 5 years? Pardon? Money? What kind of money? There's 2 kinds of money. Money that you spend and money that you make, right? And it's both. Right? An extra year is going to cost you an extra 10 grand in tuition. If you live on campus, it's going to cost you whatever that costs, with probably no income. But if you get a degree in chemistry, let's just say you got your chemistry degree and you got a job and went out and worked. your minimum starting salary would probably be somewhere around $55,000 to $60,000, working a bachelor's level chemistry job at some company. Okay? So that means that 5th year, you're missing out on that revenue and you're paying 10 grand. So let's just call it a differential of $70,000 that you're losing, either by spending an extra 10 grand and not making the 60 grand in starting salary, working at some place like Pfizer or something. Okay? So that's why we want students to finish in 4. If you're pre-med or pre-dental or pre-whatever, that's a year that you're not in medical school. That's a year that longer that you're going to have to wait before you start your practice. That's a year longer, right? And so there are just reasons why we encourage students to finish in 4. I'll be honest with you, I didn't finish in 4. It took me 5 years. I had to work while I was in college. I didn't have advisors who gave me this type of advice that I'm giving you right now. And so I worked way too much and took far too few classes, and I transferred because I went to a community college first, which nothing wrong with that. Many of you have done that as well. But it delayed my degree by a year. Okay? So that's why we call that a full-time load. Another one here, make sure that you check all your posted announcements. That's a lot easier today with Canvas, of course. Going to office hours is important. How many of you have gone to office hours to either chemistry or one of your other science classes? Okay, a couple of you. It's important to get to know your faculty member. Why is it important? Do you think if you get to know your faculty member, they're just going to be easier on you with their grading? No. But why is it important? What are you going to need in a couple of years? You're going to need a letter of recommendation. You're going to need somebody to write you a letter of recommendation to go to medical school, pharmacy school, dental school, graduate school, your first job, whatever the case may be for you. You're going to need somebody to do it. And you know what? In medical school, they want those letters of recommendation from PhDs who are in STEM. So you might get to know your English professor really well. And it will be an okay letter for them to receive, but they're going to say, why didn't you submit 3 letters from your science teachers? And if you don't meet that requirement, do you think you're going to get into medical school? No. They have way too many applicants for far too few slots. Each and every one of you will have good grades. Each and every one of you will be good MCAT scores, the whole 9 yards, right? And there will be more of you than there are slots to put you in. That's true of dental school, that's true of pharmacy school, and that's true of medical school, right? And so there are other things that are going to help set you apart. You do not need to give them a reason not to consider you. And not giving them the right letter of recommendation is always an easy one to, well, they don't have the right number. We'll just set them to the side, okay? And that happens all the time, okay? So you're going to want to get to know that faculty member a little bit so that they can write you a decent letter of recommendation. What could I say about you if all you ever did was come to class? I'm going to take that silence as nothing, right? I'm really not going to be able to say much. I'm going to go in, I'm going to look at your grades in Canvas, and I'm pretty much so going to just be able to tell them what they can already see on the transcript. Right? So-and-so came to class and got an A in my class, and that's about all I can say. Do you think that's going to go very far? No. What do you want a faculty member to be able to tell you, or say about you in a letter of recommendation? Positive qualities. What might some of those be? Work ethic, definitely. What else?
Reliability.
Pardon? Reliability, yeah. Okay, what else? I want to be able to talk about leadership skills, right? In my classes, that's one of the things that I do observe of students. Not in this class so much, we don't do a whole lot of activities in here yet. But in my other classes where we actually do active learning, I can tell which students take a lead in those activities. And that is something that I can talk about in the letter of recommendation, right? In chemistry, it's a lot easier for you because each and every one of you will have to do research. That professor who you do research with, you need to become very closely acquainted with, because they are going to be able to provide you the strongest letter of recommendation. So let's say you go and you work for, let's just say you end up doing your research with me. Now all of a sudden I can start talking about your ability to work on a real problem that nobody really knows the answer to. It's research. I can talk about your work ethic. I can talk about your reliability. Hey, we set up a schedule for them to be in lab on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. He or she was always there and on time. I can start to talk about that. I can start to talk about how you presented your work to me, how you worked through a real problem. I can start to talk about all of those things that people really want to know. And it's not just, oh, they showed up to class and they got an A in my class. I can really talk about the real things that are going to matter. So it's very, very important for you. And I think that is one of the advantages of the chemistry and biochemistry degree plans, is that we actually require you to do at least one semester of research. So how many of you in your semester by semester guide put research in your last semester? Your 496 course, your capstone. Okay. So a couple of you, right? Is that the best place to put it? Certainly satisfy our requirement, wouldn't it? I mean, you'd graduate, no problems. But why might it be better to think about doing that in, let's say, your fall semester of your senior year as opposed to your spring semester of your senior year?
So that you can already have done it when you're applying?
That's right. Yeah, it's about when you're going to be applying for your next stage of your career, right? So if you wait until the very end to have any experience with that faculty member, they're not going to be able to get you that letter on time. So keep that in mind as well. You'll also remember that we talked about the fact that there's also Chemistry 392. Okay, that is a introduction to research. That is a class I would highly recommend if you all are thinking at all about going on and doing medical school or dental school or whatever the case may be, graduate school. Go ahead and get involved in research in your sophomore year. Take a credit hour or two. And it works really nice for this 15-hour thing. So you all will be in classes and labs, and you might get to that semester where it's like, goodness, everything that I need to take with the labs adds up to 14 hours. What am I going to do for that 15th hour? A 1-hour semester of introductory research is a great way to do that. You start to get into a lab, you start to see what's being done. We don't hold you at that point accountable for an independent project. So you typically are paired with a graduate student or another undergrad and kind of get your feet wet. It's a great way to see whether or not that's the research you want to do. And it's a great way to get that 1 credit hour also to bring you to that 15 hours. So keep that in mind as you run into those semesters where you're an hour short. Or you have to decide that. So you would have to actually go around and talk to folks about and see who you might want to work with. And in the second half of this semester, we're going to have faculty members either come talk to you or on video talking about the research that they do, so you will know kind of what's going on in the department. And so what you would do, Dania, is if, let's say next semester you only had 14 hours and you wanted to try to do some Chemistry 392, you would reach out to a professor and you would say, look, I'm wanting to take some introduction to research. I'd like to sit down and talk with you about what it is you do. Can I make an appointment and come talk? And make an appointment with a couple of faculty.
Do you think it would be like, so you don't think you need like a lot of experience to be able to work?
It's going to depend on the faculty member. There are some faculty members that will always say that they want you to have had at least organic before you get into their lab. But there are some of us who will take students earlier. I'm one of them, especially for 392. 392, I do not have the expectation that you come in knowing how to sit down and do research. That's what 392 is for. And so I would bring you into the laboratory, have you work with my graduate student, maybe work with one of my capstone students, get an understanding of what it means to come in and do research, to see the process and how it works. And it actually is, I have to admit, it is an easy A. It's, if you show up, if you keep a notebook, if you, do what's expected, you're going to get an A. The only person that I've ever given a C to in that was somebody that missed about a quarter of the expected lab times. Right? You've got to be in lab at least 1 hour a week. I mean, so that was the only time that I'd given somebody something other than an A for a 392. At the end of 392, I don't expect you to write a big essay. I don't expect you to give public presentations like we have to do for your capstone. Just get into the lab, get familiar with it. At some point in that experience, I do expect you to run a reaction or two with your graduate student or senior undergraduate mentor. But I don't expect you to develop anything that we're going to send you to a conference to present or anything like that. It really is an introduction to research. Any other questions about that? And it's a great way, again, to get to that 15 hours. Okay? All right. We've already kind of talked about most of that stuff. You all know all of that kind of stuff. Does talk here about being careful about blaming others for any of your shortcomings. We all have shortcomings. That's just a nature of life. You will get to a point where you have a class or an assignment that you will want to complain and gripe about, and that's normal, but it's also very unproductive. It's a good waste of your time. It's a good waste of your mental health, in my opinion. And so I highly recommend students to avoid it. This happened to me when I was in your shoes as a junior taking physical chemistry. Physical chemistry was that one class that made me think for just a second about whether or not I wanted to continue on as a chemistry major. And it is that class where all of the things that you've learned before come together. Your physics is important, your math is important, your English is important, and your, what did I say? Did I say math? And your mathematics is important. It all comes together. And it was not easy. But I was also determined to be a chemist, and I made it through it, and I didn't blame any others for my shortcomings. I actually had a very distinguished professor who just recently passed away, unfortunately, who taught my PChem, and he was one of the few faculty members at that time that you could go knock on his door and walk in and ask him anything, and he was wonderful in that regard. And I'd like to think that our faculty here in our chemistry program are similar to that. So don't be afraid to approach them and go to their office hours. It's very, very important because you will. Everybody will run into it. And it doesn't matter which major you choose. If you choose not to remain a chemistry major, every major has the class that's similar to PChem. Okay? There's always a class that brings a lot of stuff together and will make you think and will make you struggle through a variety of problems. All right. So let me just finish up for the day. Next week I will not be here. I will be in North Carolina at a conference, but I have scheduled Dr. David Skelton to come and talk with you all. He is our nationally competitive scholarships director, I believe is his title. He is going to come and talk to you about things like the Goldwater Scholarship, National Science Foundation scholarships. There's a variety of scholarships that we have at the institution that are on a national stage. And we pride ourselves very much in these. And I will tell you that the University of Southern Mississippi is the most outstanding institution in the state of Mississippi for the production of Goldwater scholars. Goldwater scholars, you have to be STEM. You have to be thinking about moving on in graduate studies or doing an MD, PhD to qualify. But we have more Goldwater scholars in this state than all other institutions combined. We're very proud of that. And I think the reason that we're in that boat is because in the sciences, especially chemistry, biochemistry, and polymer science, we require you to get involved in research, and many of you get involved in research early. And if you get involved in that research early, you would be an excellent candidate for a Goldwater scholarship. Now, Goldwater, I forget exactly what it provides, but it does provide scholarship money. And even if you are on a presidential where you are completely covered, it is a highly prestigious award to have. And students who get the Goldwater scholarship have easier routes into medical school, have easier routes into dental school, have easier routes into graduate school. In fact, you will be sought after if you have a Goldwater scholarship. And so we have an entire office that Dr. Skelton oversees that is devoted to helping you be successful in those applications. So if you're thinking about Goldwater, if you're thinking about NSF, if you're thinking about UDOL, I mean, there's a whole series. I mean, he'll talk to you about them next Wednesday. But there are a number of opportunities, and they are very, very competitive, and we've done very, very well. We're very proud of that, and we put real resources behind it to make sure that you have a good fighting chance of getting one of those scholarships. So with that, I will dismiss class, and you all have a great week, and I will see you not next week, but the week after. But please come to class next week to hear what Dr. Skelton has to share with you.